Thank you so much, Pamela. Now, male custom of traditional initiation remains suspended due to the coronavirus pandemic. But this message doesn't seem to have filtered down to communities, though some have gone ahead with it, saying that it is tradition and cannot be stopped. Now, as the country moved to level 1 of our nationwide lockdown, there was a possibility that this rite of passage will again be allowed for the summer season. But the sharp rise in infections in provinces like the Eastern Cape has put paid to that. And yesterday saw law enforcement officials in the province shut down a number of illegal initiation schools. And joining us now to give us clarity on the summer initiation season is the Deputy Minister of Cooperative Governance and Traditional Affairs, Obed Bapela. Minister, thanks so much. Welcome to Morning Live. Minister, let's just try that again.
Good morning, Sagina.
There you are. Thanks so much for speaking to us. Now, Deputy Minister, the message seemed to have been clear during the higher lockdown levels, but seemingly not so when we move down to lower levels, and especially at alert level 1. And some would say this is evident in what we saw transpire in the Eastern Cape. What's your view on this, and why do you think things are playing out the way they are?
Let me start by thanking all traditional leaders and practitioners of our culture. When we when we started with the lockdown, all initiation seasons of winter were able to suspend, and we cooperated as government with everybody. And now we did indicate at the time that it will then depend on what happens with this coronavirus. Because it's a disease that we do not know as human beings. It happened 100 years ago with what we call the Spanish flu, and this is new to the current generation of human beings. So depending on how it behaves and then how it ravages the country, we'll keep on risk adjusting. And in the risk adjustments, we are now at level 1, and the initiation is still not yet opened. It's still suspended. And then, as we can see, Eastern Cape is spiking even more. We want to thank other provinces who have decided that they are not going to proceed with initiation 2020. But Eastern Cape have requested, and we then indicated to them that it depends on what happens. And then, indeed, Eastern Cape is spiking high. Hospital beds are now in short supply, and then hospitals are full. And if we really open the initiation this season, it will just go and ravage more people. And we don't want these children to end up in hospital and lying on the passages. And I think it's an ugly picture for us to can see. We are therefore asked the regional leaders and practitioners that once more we cannot proceed with the initiation. Should any consideration be given, will have to be advised by the health department in terms of the capacity should any incidences happen in the initiation season. But for now, indeed, we can all see that Eastern Cape is really spiking.
Deputy Minister, you started your response to that first question by saying you'd like to thank traditional leaders, but we know that Consultation, for example, has been rather vocal in expressing their disagreement with government's decision in this regard. Was there sufficient consultation about how this would be handled?
Well, the first time in March, we did meet with traditional leaders. The Deputy President led the delegation, and we all agreed that we will suspend the winter season. And then again, at level 3, the President did once more meet. We're on teleconferencing with all traditional leaders, including Consultation. And we continue to agree that the virus is still with us, and we continue suspending quite a number of other cultural activities other than the initiation season. And then on this one, there were plans to meet with the traditional leaders and others, but unfortunately, the diaries did not permit. However, with the spike in the Eastern Cape, I think everybody can see that we are in trouble. And therefore, even any consideration obviously will be guided by the behavior of the virus. But for now, the behavior is getting worse as we enter the holiday season. and it's going to be difficult. The risk adjustment will still apply anytime, should it be under control any moment, early in the year or any time. We could still look at the possibilities at the time. I know that quite a number of children will want to go to university in Maine because it's a proud culture in the Eastern Cape particularly. They wouldn't want to go to university and start. Universities are only starting in March. We still have February. Should conditions improve anywhere in the country, we'll then see if we cannot then put the risk adjustment with particular conditions that will definitely have to be adhered so that when they are there, they do not contract the disease itself, the coronavirus.
Deputy Minister, we know that discussions around culture and tradition are always emotive. So there are arguments around what has and hasn't been allowed. And some people argue that opening other gatherings like churches and even taverns, but keeping traditional rites of passage to manhood suspended is actually a sign of disrespect to people's culture. What's your view on that?
Look, we didn't lose every cultural activity. If you could look at the regulations, we did allow cultural activities like Uklamba, and when the widowers have to go through a particular ritual. But we then said it must be observed within the protocol adherences. It has a social spacing element in it, whereas the initiation is a confined space, a congested space, is a small space. You can't even do any social distancing. In churches, that's why we said the churches can't be in full capacity. Stadiums are still locked, no fans are allowed there. So there are those that obviously of other gatherings that are still prohibited. And we're not really against culture on this one. We proudly want our cultures to be expressed. The Constitution gives the right of every community to express their own cultural activities, but the coronavirus, COVID-19, is something that we have to manage. The Constitution says that we need to protect life, and the government is there to protect life. We know it's a very difficult matter, it's a very emotive matter, but we just hope that we could just cooperate and wait for the other risk adjustments should they be allowed, and we'll definitely take this matter into cognizance. But for now, particularly in the Eastern Cape, it is not doable.
Minister Bapela, you also mentioned the fact that there would still be time for those who wanted to undergo this rite of passage since university will only open in March, and many of those attending right now would want to go there as men and not as boys. Now, what's going to happen to those whose huts were demolished in the Eastern Cape yesterday? Because some have been hospitalized, and there is an argument that is being made that hospitalizing them actually targets them for stigmatization and victimization, as they need to be viewed as real men by their peers. Is this something that you're particularly concerned about, also in protecting the dignity of these young men?
Definitely, we want to protect the dignity of the young men, but each time this initiation takes place, whether there's corona or no coronavirus, you'll find that there will always be some ending up in hospital because the surgical procedure might have gone wrong. And often it happens in the areas of the Eastern Cape where they still cannot manage the incidences, unfortunately. And these boys have been ending in hospital. However, there are other NGOs who have been working with us who will then provide facilities nearer to where the incident is happening, still in the forest up there on the mountain, so that they don't end up in hospital. But the facilities are not as expansive. They are limited to particular areas. They can't cover everybody because we want to bring that dignity. And we hope, therefore, that as we move into the future, we'll be able to expand on such facilities so that children do not end up going to hospital, because the stigmatization is very serious. Those children end up going to re-circumcise again, going back to initiation simply because they could not proceed at the time when the incident happens. But we will want to save it in whatever way, and that is why we're engaging with those who could provide other facilities to help.
So in conclusion, Deputy Minister, what's your message to communities who partake in these practices? What should they do now?
We call on parents because I know they have pressures from the children who says, I want to do it, I want to be a man. We appeal on the children themselves, we appeal on communities, we appeal on traditional leaders and everybody else that coronavirus, unfortunately, is still with us. And the incidences of coronavirus contractions are going higher. And then I think we can see it in the news. We're not hiding anything as government. The initiation season is still suspended. Any other issues that people are defying, definitely the law will take its course, and then they will be arrested, and unfortunately there will be disruptions, and unfortunately people will end up being in hospitals, which is a stigma again. And can they just wait for 6 months? Maybe in June situations will have improved, and then let's see what happens in the next 6 months. However, should the situation improve around February next year, we could really begin to look at the risk-adjusted strategy and put in conditions and adherences for those who are desperate, who want to go. But the rest of others can wait until 6 months' time in June and also next year in December, hoping that the virus will have subsided, there will be a vaccine, and we'll be able to go back to normality under new norms, because now this virus has taught us to behave in a particular manner. We just make that appeal and hoping that we'll cooperate on this. And those who are doing illegal initiations, the law must take its course, must be arrested. The Disaster Management Act has clauses that says it's an offense, and then everybody will be arrested. We'll have criminal records as you walk along. And, once you have a criminal record as a human being, life becomes very difficult later if you have to go for other opportunities elsewhere. We are therefore making that appeal that the initiation is still suspended.
Well, thank you so much to Obed Bapela, who's the Deputy Minister responsible for Cooperative Governance and Traditional Affairs, giving us clarity regarding the summer initiation season that remains suspended, as you just heard the Deputy Minister saying, due to the coronavirus pandemic. It's time now to bring you sports news.